Hello everyone, and I'm here with Stamnus for a kind of review of the i7, which is titled Shit or OP. And there's actually a pretty good reason for that, because the i7 is probably the only contender at tier 10, which is really hard to put in either of those two categories. Let's start with the shit department. What is really bad about the i7? First of all, it's got the second lowest HP of any tier 10 heavy, only the 50B, which is not really that much of a heavy for a heavy, having 50 less. And most tier 10s which are used in competitive play, such as the E100, 215B, kind of E5, IS4, have 3, 4, 500 more HP, which is just insanely much. Next up is the armor. i7 armor is really weird, like seriously. The turret front is basically impenetrable. Only E3 or E4 APCR have a chance of coming through. Everything else doesn't. If you want to show that off, Damnus, I guess why not? Like, you can get, with tier 10 heavy gold, you need like a shot out of 1,000 to be able to pin the turret front. Let's actually write all that stuff down. Wouldn't that be awesome? So, no HP. Armor question mark. The upper front plate is like in that weird category where it's actually okay if I'm angled straight at my enemy. Although not that much against, tier 10 gold ammo, especially APCR from the 215B for example, and not at all against TDs. The lower plate is shit, but what makes it even worse is its ugly pike nose, which means you literally cannot try side scraping in an i7 ever. It's just not possible, you will get penned every time. You can't either angle either, so your lower plate is always going to stay flat 220 or 230mm, whatever it is, which is pretty shit too. Because if you try and angle, then the guy just shoots you through the pike nose, obviously. And you can't reverse side scrape either, which I guess at tier 10 not a lot of tanks can, but the IS4 kind of can, because if you do, not best reverse side scrape position ever, but just imagine this would be a bit better made, the enemy can just shoot you in that angled part of the back plate. I guess kind of like the IS4 front actually, and pin you every time. The sides are also nice shot, Damnus. Like completely Russian. There's no other word for it. The spaced armor from here to like this area, especially the top part of it, is really hard to pin. Nearly impenetrable with heat, with APCR. If it's angled, you can pretty much forget it too. Flat on, you can pin. But everything below it, aka especially above the tracks, between the spaced armor, and even like, in the middle of the tracks, upper part of the tracks, you are going to pin nearly every time, even with heat, just because the tracks have like nearly no armor and behind it is maybe 50mm or something. So pretty weird tank in that sense. Next up is a gun. Where you have shitty 250mm AP penetration. If I'm not wrong, only the E100 has worse. I'm not completely sure about that right now. Maybe the Type 5 Heavy too. 303 APCR, which again is second worst of all tier 10s. Only the Type 5 Heavy having less gold penetration. And obviously you can kind of discuss between heat and APCR. If it were like 310, 315 APCR, I would probably prefer it over 330 heat. But 303 APCR is so shit that you're gonna bounce on like flat E100 turrets and things like that, which you just can't afford to bounce on when you're playing in a competitive game. Obviously 490 alpha, you get around 10 point something seconds reload, 10.84 seconds reload with completely maxed out setup. And all that only gives you a DPM of 2150, which again is second worst in tier from all the tanks I checked. The only one being worse is a mouse. And telling you that the mouse is not used in competitive play or even good in randoms, I think won't come as a surprise to anyone. One of the big advantages of the IS7 for a long time used to be its top speed of 60 km per hour. However, with a recent 113 buff making it have more HP, a better gun, the same top speed or nearly the same top speed, and actually acceleration to go with it and be able to actually reach that top speed on a flat ground, there's kind of nearly no reason to use an i7 ever. One would think. However, on the other hand, the i7 still gets used a lot, be it in clan wars, be it in ESL, or be it in randoms where it's also a good tank still. You will see it used, and quite a lot so. And why is that? Mainly for one reason. If you have a look at all the tier 10 tanks in the game, the only two I can think of which are virtually impenetrable by gold, at least in a certain position, is a hold down E3, and even that can get penned, and a hold down I7. A side-skipping 100 gets penned in the turret. A side-skipping 215B gets penned in that little thing, or in the turret front, right here for example. All of that, easy pens. Even a reverse side-skipping IS4 can get penned in the turret roof, for example. If you have an I7 hold down, he is not getting penned. So that makes it a very, very good tank, both defensively, and also to be used aggressively as a spotter on ridgelines. For example, you see that a lot in IS7 and Prokhorovka, sometimes even steps, where you just poke with an I7 turret, spot everything, and then the rest of your team either is in arties and, clicks, or is in tanks and just snipes away. And then the second thing the I7, even though all I said is still true, excels at is taking damage when pushing in. Because, first of all, it's tricky to choose what ammunition you're going to use against an I7 when you don't know how he's going to be facing you. If you got his side, you want to be shooting APCR, or, AP, if that's your standard ammunition. But if you got his front, heat is definitely what you want to use, so you're able to pin that upper plate at kind of any angle. And what's also really good about the I7 is that it's really flat. I mean, the 215B is not a high tank, but I would say the I7 is definitely Z, or at least one of the two, 113 also being really flat. Flattest tier 10s which are around. Which is actually a really good advantage, a really big advantage to just pin my turret. Wow, okay, yes. I got angled. Because not only is the I7 flat, let's say I'm crossing kind of on a ridgeline. Would be nice if I could show this right now, but I can't figure out. Yeah, let's go over there. Stay here, damn this. Obviously, there's not really a ridgeline, but where, for example, an E100 is like this high, an I7, if you turn your turret to the enemy and you're crossing that kind of hold down area, your turret is not penetrable, sideways on, if you're aiming at the enemy, and even the side of the turret of the I7, by the way. Like, I7 turret at 45 degrees is still nearly impenetrable, which would be something like this. We did extensive testing for some hold down positions on Rudenberg defense and stuff, and an I7 turret at this angle is nearly impenetrable, especially if you're slightly above your enemy. And on top of that, as you can see, obviously if you go full side on, the rear part of the side can get penned. If you want to show that, Damnus. Can. What? You have to shoot even more in the back. Literally. In the back of the turret. There you go. But, yeah. And additionally, below the nearly impenetrable turret, you got that nearly impenetrable space side armor, which makes it really good for crossing positions which other heavies would be either too big or too slow, or not have the side armor. To be able to cross without taking at least not a lot of damage. I mean, if 10 guys shoot you and you take one shot and in exchange get an awesome position, that's a pretty good trade. If you're crossing with a 113 or an A5 and you take 10 shots and 8 pen, you are kind of fucked. And yeah, it's still got more HP than mediums. It's still got that 490 alpha, which although the DPM is horrible, you can kind of argue it's nice to have when you have a lot of 140s around to kind of have one or two I7s to put out that 1000 damage alpha with one or two shots, depending if you've got two or one. That's really the point of the I7. Like, it's got two uses, literally, which are YOLOing in like a retard, not even doing that much damage, just doing one or two shots before dying, but absorbing so much damage. And you really actually have to focus them out, because if you don't, they're going to start side-hugging your tanks, and you can't really focus them out then, and then they took a lot of damage, but you can't kill them, and it's a really tricky situation. And while you're busy killing the 100s, the 5 STB, while you're busy killing the I7s, the 5 STBs or the 350Bs or whatever is there are going to clip all your tanks, wreck all your tanks, with their actually insane TPM. And the second one is just being in hold down position. For example, I'm actually going to give you a nice example, shall I? Obviously, you all know hold down positions, and you all know a lot of them. But just to give you a nice example on Himmelstoff, going to drive back a bit, which can be used really well, mainly in ESL and Clown Wars. Not that much in randoms, because it doesn't make that much sense. Obviously, these windows would be nice. But you can, for example, put an I7 behind this over here, give him optics, and just have him stand like this, and he will spot the hill, and he will not get penetrated. There's some, really icky position, but it pretty much, if you just stand like this, you will not get penetrated, like, ever. They can start shooting HE at you, but you can still shoot back. You got your optics, and then you have your team standing, for example, even behind that gap over there, and ripping everything. And if there's nothing on hill, he can just peek down on the 8 line, spot anyone crossing, giving them a shot on the cross. Sometimes even penetrating with its shitty gun. and that's kind of that. However, if you want to use IS7s, and I kind of, made you think this tank is awesome, be aware of one thing. 2150 alpha and the HP and the shitty DPM really make it the worst tank of all heavies in an engagement. We did, again, some testing to find out what heavies are good, what heavies are bad, what to use in which positions. A 215B wrecks an i7 having around half of his HP left when the i7 is dead. An E100, pretty much the same story. As long as he doesn't low roll and do, 2150 with 3 shots, which is already under average, so completely expectable, he will rape you. And even if he does need a full shot, he's still going to kill you before you kill him. Even a Conqueror, Tier 9 British Heavy, is going to win a 1-on-1 against an i7 9 times out of 10. Talking open ground, talking every shot penetrates. But again, Conqueror's 325 APCR in the i7 armor, as long as it's not hold down, it's not going to do much against that. I think we covered nearly everything. Damnless, want to add something maybe?
Not really. I mean, like, I guess it's just i7-ish Russian armor.
Yeah.
That's what it's used to be, or what is still used, and I think it will be ever used, as long as it does not get nerfed, especially in the turrets.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it. We can add as well to that when you were on my side, I couldn't even shoot your plate, because you were just too flat.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. You can actually side lock a bit like a 140 with an i7, and it can be really, really tricky to bend you.
I can turret then luckily, but I can't get on your plate or on your side. I mean, sides for this E100s or something like this side scrape, going inside like this is really OP actually.
Yeah, completely true.
I think you could cover the most. For hull down positions, it's for me still the best tank simply because of the turret. It simply is that.
Yeah, and also I guess what I should add, what actually makes it so good at pushing in, is that when you're moving, since your armor is got angles everywhere, be it you don't want to shoot the space side, you don't want to shoot the wrong part of the upper plate, you don't always want to shoot the lower plate, stuff like that. When you're moving, and maybe your enemy is also kind of moving back and forth because he's trying to not get wrecked by your team, it can be really hard for him to actually aim at the perfect position, giving you those bounces that your team needs to absorb 1 or 2 shots, which can make the entire difference in the fight. Exactly like that. Okay, I guess that's it. I hope you learned something. Maybe you can use this tank in randoms or in ESL, have a look at what positions to use it, and good luck on the battlefield. See you next time. Bye bye.